My first business was a complete failure.
I haven't said this since, but actually, I don't think that I would still be in business if it wasn't for that conversation.
I mean, if you're bootstrapping a business, it can get a bit hairy for sure.
Rarely do any of us get a chance to spend time with somebody who has truly changed an industry, but that's just what I'm doing today. I'm joined by Ben Goss, CEO and founder of Dynamic Planner. We'll be talking about Ben's life, his successes, his failures, and how he's come on a long journey to create a truly market-leading technology company which has made others up their game. Welcome to The Effective Advisor, a podcast from Change Squared. I'm Ben Wright. Hi Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi Ben, thank you. It was quite some introduction. Great to be here.
Quite some person to have on the show. I really appreciate your time.
You're very kind.
So this really is a bit of a first, because normally on The Effective Advisor we take a topic that will help advisors become more effective in how they operate and discuss that. But for the first time ever, today we'll be discussing you.
Right, okay.
So I think that there'll be some great lessons that people can learn from what you've done over the course of your career, really. And I think that I would like to personally delve more into your business acumen today.
Right, okay. I'll have to put my thinking cap on. Okay.
Well, I think a good place to start would probably be at the start.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, how did you get into financial services?
Oh, that's a good question. So my first experience with financial services was when I was at university, and a friend of mine that worked for an asset manager, now quite a large asset manager, and indeed client of Dynamic Planner, he said to me, Ben, do you want to earn some money for the summer? What student doesn't? And he said, I've got an amazing job. Come down. And I stayed at his place for the summer, and we basically worked at this investment company. And every day I'd go in, you were given a script, and people would call in. The company would put ads in the paper and on the tubes. This is in 1987, summer of 1987. And people would call up wanting to invest 4, 5, sometimes 6 figures. You'd read off the script. Buy this Southeast Asian fund and here's why. Buy our smaller companies fund and here's why. And they would send their checks in and they would get invested. I mean, it was quite extraordinary. I was a student, environmental science student, and I had no knowledge of financial services, yet here I was, age 19, basically encouraging people to make investments. Now, the firm actually got fined quite a lot of money for what happened that summer. I was a student, as was everyone else in that room. I didn't know what was going on, but as I developed in my career, I ended up as a strategy consultant at Coopers and Lybrand rather than PwC. A partner walked into the office one day and said, who knows something about PEPs? And because I'd sold them in the summer, I put my hand up and I said, I know a bit about these things. He said, great, you're on this project. And that was me off and running in financial services. We did one very, very interesting project, which was a big motor insurance brand with a red telephone, their first foray into investments. And I worked as a product manager on that project. And I was fascinated, Ben. I was fascinated by the use of technology. I mean, back then it was phone-based technology. It was genuine green screens. The call operatives would see these green screens. But by this idea that you could actually use these two things to help somebody invest, I found that fascinating. I mean, we all know what happened in October 1987, Black Monday, and as I went on in my career, it became clearer and clearer that my first experience of financial services was really quite bad, that the odds were stacked against the consumer. The people that ran that company knew a lot about risk. They knew a lot about how these investments were likely to perform. The consumer who was buying had no idea. And come Black Monday and the week or two that followed, stock markets lost 20%, then 40%. I mean, the UK was down 40% at one point. A lot of those people, many of whom were either in retirement or preparing for retirement, would have lost significant amount of their savings. And that experience really stayed with me. As I did more and more work in financial services, I realised how the industry was structured and why that sort of thing happened. It didn't just happen in that firm. At that time, in the 80s and 90s, that sort of practice was very widespread in one form or another. When the internet came along in the late 90s and mid to late 90s, I thought this is an amazing opportunity. I'd worked on the launch of Egg Bank. Egg Invest was the kind of investment proposition. It was very clear again that the internet could completely change, particularly the information imbalance between the consumer and the product provider, and create a much more level playing field. I then decided that was what I wanted to go and focus my efforts on. Yeah.
And was that the start of Sort?
It was, yeah. The Sort was my second business. My first business was a complete failure. When I came back from university, I went to uni in the States, and when I came back in '91, there was a recession, and I set up a market research business, and I went to the Prince's Trust actually, and said to them, "Will you back this business?" And they said, "No, we won't do that." But they introduced me to a mentor, a guy called Robert Perrin, who had been very, very successful as a strategy consultant and in the city as well. And Robert, over months and ultimately years, basically gave me coaching and advice from the sidelines and said, "Look, if you want to build a consulting practice, as I thought I did at that point, you need to go and be one, and you need to go and get into one of these firms over here." And that's what I did. So that was my first business, which didn't last very long, but I did learn a lot from it through Robert.
What was it that made it not work? What was the reflecting on things?
Where do you want to start? I didn't know the market. I didn't know any customers. I didn't know anything about business. Yeah, the list goes on.
Just to jump into the dark and hoping.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to run my own business. That was very clear. That's always been my ambition. But yes, I didn't really know how or anything about how to do it. So yes. So yeah, you're right. In '98, I left PwC with a great friend of mine from Accenture and another good friend who went on actually to be CFO of Direct Line, and we built Sort, which was the first online advice business. It was the first time the regulator had regulated a business to deliver financial advice online, and we did it because we felt that actually people wanted to sort their money out. We felt that people wanted to do so in a kind of engaging and transparent way. And you know, in many ways it was very successful. We were advising over 10,000 people a month at one point, over 1,000 people a day at one point, before we sold that business to Empower, who were at the time the kind of leader in online advice in the US, now owned by Morningstar. So yeah, that was quite a ride, and we worked very hard, but we were very lucky with our timing, selling just before the dot-com boom bust in April 2000. But yes, that was Sort, and you know, it was successful in its own way. But I learned a lot from that business, Ben, and I learned most of the people that would call us up, or rather get in touch online, would then say things like, I remember we had no systems whatsoever. I remember sitting at home one afternoon with hundreds of emails, just trying to respond to hundreds of emails. And most of those emails were saying, I'm going to take this piece of advice, because it was giving advice, to my financial advisor to discuss it with them. And it became very clear that actually what we'd done was we created a mechanism for people who were getting advice to have a better, deeper conversation with their advisors. And so when the time came, I thought, if we want to make the biggest impact that we can, if we really want to engage people in their finances and do that in a way that is beneficial to the industry as a whole, then we need to go where the money is. And money is with financial advisors and with financial advice firms. And that is true in this country, it's true in Europe. All those firms take slightly different shapes. It's true in Australia and the United States. It's true around the world. As human beings, we crave, not all of us, but most of us, advice of some description or other. Confidence, trust. These are very important words when you're dealing with important topics. We felt that actually we could, in what became known as Dynamic Planner, create an experience, and the clue is absolutely in the name. We wanted to create a dynamic planning experience that engaged the customer, meant that the advisor could demonstrate their value, the advisor could deliver value faster, quicker, more consistently, and digitally in a way that they couldn't without technology. So yeah.
Amazing! What a journey.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, because you studied in the States, you said, Indiana, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
And am I right in thinking that you won the MacArthur Foundation scholarship?
I did.
Which is
yes.
often known as the Genius Grant.
No, that's not true. So it is the same foundation.
Is it not?
So
okay.
You're quite right, Ben. The MacArthur Foundation is famous for what is known as the Genius Awards, yes. And they give one of these, or maybe two away each year, and they give some lucky person, or not lucky person, some incredibly talented and hard-working person $1 million so that they can do what they want for a year. That's what they're famous for. But what they also do, or did, I don't know if they still do it, is they fund 10 fellowships a year for graduate students. And I was lucky enough to be a recipient of one of those. Yeah.
Oh,
the
okay.
award I got was for research in economic development, which was really my passion and something I'm still fascinated by now. I was studying geography. I focused on the economic development, actually, of the Caribbean, and that foundation, the fellowship, really was to support my studies there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what made you go to the States? Because that's quite a jump, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so I went to uni. Like many, I've got kids now who are of that age. I went because I think my parents said it would be a good thing to do. I played a lot of rugby. I was captain of the rugby team by the time I left. And in my last year, Ben, I really began to enjoy learning and studying and thinking. And by the time I finished, I thought, actually, do you know what? I want to do more of this, but I want to go and see more of the world. So I applied all around the world. I applied to the US, to New Zealand, to France, a few other places. Got a few acceptances, but I didn't have any money, so I needed scholarships and fellowships, and a few places I was very fortunate. A few places offered me, and Indiana had a great economic geography program. There was a particular professor there who was very, very well known in this field, and he was keen for me to come, and so I went. Yeah.
Have you always had that sense of adventure, wanting to get out and explore?
Gosh, that is a good question. I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that I definitely view the world as an abundant place. I definitely think that, that one can create one's own opportunities, and I think that goes as much for countries and industries and businesses as it does for individuals. My parents were very kind of action-orientated individuals, and maybe some of that rubbed off on me. I don't know. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that at one point, I read it online anyway, and you never quite know online whether stories are true or not, that when you left university you applied for 50 jobs and got rejected, and the 51st one
That is absolutely right. Yeah,
Very
that is
well.
absolutely right, Ben. Yeah. So, and in college, I had learnt some basic programming, and I thought actually initially I was going to be a programmer. That was my aim, to be a programmer analyst, developer analyst, as the term goes, or was back then. I applied. That's correct. Yes, for just over 50. I used to paper my wall in my bedroom with all of the rejection letters, and then I got one that said come for an interview, and I went, and yes, I got the job. But it was interesting because at my leaving do, so I went from there to Cooper's. My boss basically said, look, you are the single worst developer that we have ever employed, and it's really good that you're going to do something else, because you're going to be much better at this than you were at your job. So a good piece of career advice, albeit in the rearview mirror. But I learned a lot about the development process, and how I have empathy with that process. You know, I wasn't a good developer, but I do understand the process. And you know, I spent Monday with our team, for example, in Reading, kind of a dozen of us in the room, tackling a particularly knotty challenge that we're looking into and facing into at the moment. And you know, I think my understanding of the processes are helpful in that regard now, even now.
Tech has been your focus from very early on then, if coding was where you looked to start. Did you think a tech firm was where you would end up going?
No. I mean, I think I've always seen the power of technology, I'd like to think, but always as a route to delivering value. You know, those first jobs I was applying for, I was fascinated more by the analytical opportunity than perhaps the fact that you had to be able to develop or code. It was a sort of second order thing really for me. And I still think today, you know, the work that we do at Dynamic Planner is all about how can we use technology to deliver value to the advice firm, to the advisor, to the client, to the asset manager. You know, we're spending a lot of time on BI at the moment, business intelligence, and you know, that's all about how can you use technology, big data, data lakes to add value in ways that you just couldn't as a human being. So, yeah.
It does seem to me like the financial advice community has got such a huge amount of data, but yet don't really do much with it.
I think that time is 100%. That time is coming. I think this is one of the most exciting things on the horizon right now. I mean, we're doing a series of case studies at the moment. I was listening in to one last week, and this is an amazing company, a private equity-backed advice firm, really operating at scale. They've got to 400 clients per advisor. In terms of service, their servicing model, they are delivering cash flow for almost all of them using Dynamic Planner because it's super easy to do. But to your point, the amount of data that you get about what is it that a client is planning, and you know, consumer duty, we need to be thinking about client outcomes. Do we understand what they are? Do we really understand what they are? And planning, cash flow planning is a fantastic tool to ensure that is happening. And can we track them? And you know, tracking those outcomes is also part of consumer duty. I was with an asset manager client last week, and they were saying one of the challenges, the discretionary manager, one of the challenges that they face in their business is that from time to time they see quite lumpy withdrawals. And this is a material part of their business. Why is that happening? Because the grandkids are going to school, they're going to private school, and they need to be funded. Now, the planning process tells you that this is a goal. It also tells you when those goals are. So, you know, as an advice firm, I want to know, but as an asset manager, I also want to know so I can plan around those things. Just one example, but you know, absolutely. The data, the insights that one can generate from planning. You know, I haven't said this in public before, but you can tell me what you think of it. But if you remember the Tom Cruise, do you know the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report?
Very well.
With the precogs who lie in that really weird pond and they're kind of lying there thinking about crimes before they're committed. Well, it's a really poor analogy, which is probably why I haven't used it before in public. But financial planning is upstream of activity, right? Financial planning is upstream of recommendations, which are upstream of investments either being made or taken out. So to understand what's about to happen through the planning process is incredibly powerful for vertically integrated firms, incredibly powerful for compliance departments, incredibly powerful for asset managers, because I should be able to understand the flows that I'm going to get. And that's one of the reasons that we're very excited about the data that financial planning brings. Yeah.
I'd never thought about it on those terms, actually. But
Yeah, no, please don't. Yeah.
Minority Report's a good example, the precog thing.
Yeah.
But actually thinking you could accurately predict your business flows based on cash flow modelling, I never even thought of that. But you're so right, because
yeah, I mean, look,
you know what's going to happen.
Most firms are doing some form of that today. Most firms are predicting their revenues based on AUM today. All cash flow, risk-based cash flow is doing is projecting the likely returns for those risks, for those assets anyway. So if you're using Dynamic Planner for your clients, why wouldn't you use it to think about the asset returns for your and projections for your firm? Yeah.
But also the withdrawals, like buy a new car, grandkids going to private school, all these type of things, you know they're going to happen because they're in the cash flow model.
They're in the plan, absolutely.
Fascinating to know whether anyone's actually doing that in the real world and taking that cash flow data and then applying that on a higher scale, especially the withdrawal side of things. Because I always think AI is the kind of the future for big data. But then I have conversations and realise I'm not quite as informed as maybe I thought I was about AI, and actually it's just a clever algorithm as opposed to machine learning, true machine learning and kind of sentience as to context around things. Where do you see the kind of AI side of things? Is it going to change everything for good, or is it more just like a calculator? It makes maths easier. What's the...
Yeah. So look, I mean, just to finish off on the point about, cash flow modelling is still a minority sport. In most firms, it is not undertaken by most advisors on most clients. That's still true today. There's a huge amount of effort, both from us and others in the industry, to make cash flow easier, to get data into the cash flow process, to get it out. But we have a big opportunity, is one way to look at it, to help more advisors deliver more cash flow planning to more of their clients. Why shouldn't everybody have a cash flow plan? Ultimately, Consumer Duty is all about understanding the client outcomes, helping them model those outcomes. And we are having some success in our business. 95% of all annual reviews that go out with a simple cash flow forecast in them. And so, I think consumers and clients are seeing the power of this, and I think firms could grasp it more, yeah.
And often pictures are easier to digest than words,
Pictures
aren't they?
absolutely. Pictures say 1,000 words for sure.
Hi everyone, and I hope you're enjoying the show. Just want to take your attention for a brief minute to tell you about today's sponsor, which is Owen James Events. Owen James Events are a leading events and research company who are paving the way for innovation in the financial world and are dedicated to bringing positive change to our industry. Their flagship brand is called Red Folder Events, which is a comprehensive event management solution that covers everything from audience identification and invitations to delivering an exceptional event experience. Whether it's a breakfast briefing, lunch event, annual conference or full-day gathering, Red Folder Events has you covered, offering options for virtual, hybrid or in-person, bespoke and customised events. Be sure to go to their website, owenjamesevents.com, and have a look for Red Folder Events. Okay, let's get back to the show.
You've talked about kind of the future plans, or well, I suppose you've hinted at some future ideas of change. Is there anything you can say about where Dynamic Planner's going next, or is it all still under wraps?
Oh gosh, what are we doing? So, I mean, we've done a huge amount this year, as you talked about in the before we turned the cameras on, we took private equity last year, and that part of that was really to fund the next kind of expansion of Dynamic Planner. And our ambition is to double the size of the business here and open in Europe, where we're making some good progress. And a lot of that is really about helping our clients deliver the financial planning and advice that they want for their clients, demonstrating their value to their clients, and doing it really efficiently. And I think if you go to any firm or any advisor conference, you know as well as I that efficiency is everything now. In a world where you have to deliver value, you have to demonstrate value, getting the cost to deliver down, the cost to serve down is critical. So integrating your tech stack. So we've built an end-to-end financial planning system, profiling, reviewing the client, reviewing their portfolio, building forward-looking cash flow plans, researching products, researching funds, making recommendations, suitability letters. And that's very powerful, the most powerful in the industry. We've got clients who will say, what was taking us 6 or 7 hours. Some firms at scale are able now to get an annual review done in 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, it's that order of magnitude of change. They've got small teams delivering thousands, if not tens of thousands of reviews now for hundreds of advisors. So it's a very, very, very scale model that we've invested in over the last 4 years. And the plan is to scale that up. So what do we have to do that? We have to do a few things. We have to deepen our integrations with the rest of the tech stack. So integrate with the practice management systems. We've had an integration with IntelliFlow for some time, for many, many years. We're working on deepening that. We've got an integration with Iris. We've just gone live with Time for Advice. We've got an integration with Salesforce. We're using a technology called low-code, no-code technology, because there's a lot of new entrants, as you will know, into the practice management space now. Some are pure play practice management systems, some are pure play CRM systems, but we are continually getting calls. Can we integrate Dynamic Planner with other pieces of technology? So we're doing that. We're integrating with more and more platforms. We went live recently with M&G Wealth, for example, which is used by a number of our bigger clients. So we're really committed to integrations and building those out. We upgraded all of our clients in the summer to the latest version of Dynamic Planner Elements. There are a number of things there that we need to round out. We are making quite a lot of upgrade to the cash flow process, for example, you mentioned, which we're very excited about. The recommendation process. So there's a big amount of investment going on there. And then the final part of that, I guess, is the digital access by clients, which today is getting used more and more. I can send you an invitation before a review meeting to look at your information, to be able to check it, tell me if your circumstances have changed, if your objectives have changed, if you've got an inheritance or lost your job or got a pay rise or whatever it is, and all of that goes into the Dynamic Planner fact find, which comes back into the review process. So again, it's really cramming down the amount of time that an advisor or a support service member of the team can, the amount of work they actually have to do is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's a good point. It doesn't have to be an advisor, does it?
No.
In fact, it'd make more sense probably not to be an advisor doing most of the process, because
Absolutely.
Advisors are your most expensive resource.
Absolutely. And if I look at where our company is growing, it's growing across the board, but what we call support team licenses are growing at the fastest pace, whether those are paraplanners, administrators, because as you rightly say, there's a precious number of advisors with all the skill, expertise, time it takes to become a good one. And so if you can complement them with good people, and a number of our clients will say, one of the things they love about Dynamic Planner is it does a lot of the hard yards so that you don't have to have particularly skilled support staff in order to use it. So, yeah.
Amazing. Sounds like an exciting new chapter coming down the line.
Yeah, no, we're very excited. We've got a whole heap of developments for next year, which we will be unveiling later on. Yeah.
Let's talk business.
Yeah.
So you had your first company, Sort, which did very well, sold just before the market disappeared.
Yeah.
And was that just a straight sale?
It was.
And was it based in the US?
So it was a US company that bought us, yeah.
Were you a US company? Or were you
No, we're a little British company, yeah.
So how was that kind of cross-border sale purchase thing? Work fine, or was it at its...
It was fine. I mean, it was very interesting. We were out looking for venture capital, knocking on doors, as you do. And we were introduced to this guy who was the chief exec and founder of Empower, and a guy called Drake Mosier, and who really founded the online advice movement in the US. And he said, look, I want to expand to Europe, and I'd love to use your company as the kind of foundation stone for that. And they kind of bought us lock, stock and barrel to that end. Yeah.
So did that influence how you started Dynamic Planner? That kind of, having been through one business which didn't work out, a second business which did work out, did that kind of change your mindset as to when you were starting in a way to finish almost?
So, Empower was a D2C business. It was actually a business that delivered financial advice to 401k pension participants, so DC pension participants. These are huge businesses now in the US, less so here. I felt that I just felt there wasn't a great product market fit for the UK. I just didn't see that same opportunity emerging, and I think it was very clear to me at that point that if you want to make a change, you work with advice firms, large and small, to help them embrace technology, which means they can engage their clients. That was my strategy. That was the view that I had then, and I have now. So, I definitely learned a lot about how. So one thing that Empower was very, very good at was it had a very strong institutional grade asset risk modelling function with a chief investment officer of some repute and a team and a technology approach to this which rivaled any institutional pension fund manager. And we've essentially built the same here at Dynamic Planner. Our chief investment strategist is ex-head of risk for one of the for Threadneedle Europe, and prior to that for Invesco for Europe. We have CFAs, we have qualified actuaries. It's an institutional team that we have who are looking at these things, because at the heart of our business, Ben, is a brand promise, if you like, that when you are building a financial plan with a client and you are setting that risk, that is the risk that will be delivered, and we monitor it daily. We monitor the performance of our risk profiles every day. MSCI now, and have for some time, publish daily indices based on the Dynamic Planner risk profiles at a management meeting every month. Chief investment strategist stands up and explains how the profiles have done versus the value at risk numbers that are in Dynamic Planner, because that is the way that thousands of advisors are setting expectations with their clients, and so it's important. This is kind of at the heart of our matching process, if you like. And while we do all sorts of things, if you think about the financial planning process around risk, you go back to my days in 1987 and the kind of risk imbalance in information, whether you are profiling a client, whether you're reviewing their portfolio, whether you're researching new recommendations, building forward-looking cash flow plans, the consistency of approach is critical. Because if you get that right, then you are setting good expectations with the client, and that means that they should remain a client for life. They may not always like the outcome, right? We can't control what the markets do, but you can absolutely control the risk that a client is taking.
So talk us through then from you being at your starting dynamic planner from your front room, and then how you kind of move through that start phase of things. And was it all plain sailing or not?
Definitely not. No. So I mean, the good thing about the kind of exit we had in 2000 was that it gave me the funds to be able to fund Dynamic Planner initially. You're quite right. It was founded in my front room. And there were 3 of us that founded it, and you know the vision then was the vision now. It's been somewhat a circuitous route as most of these things are. You know, we spent the first 10 years taking Dynamic Planner to institutions. A number of the banks implemented it. Many of the insurers used it with IFAs, platforms. But when RDR came about, those business models themselves were put under challenge. And that is never a great place to be if your clients are being, if your client's business model is being challenged. And so we decided about 10 years ago that we were really going to focus on one product being the very best that we could be, one way of describing risk, one user experience, and that if we could do that to the best of our ability, then we would please 80% of people in the market, 80% of advice firms, 80% of asset managers. We're at 43% today, so I guess you could say we're halfway there. And you know, 10 years ago we had a couple of firms using Dynamic Planner as we know it today, direct, and today, you know, it's well over 2,000 firms now, 170 asset managers. You know, we absolutely have a SaaS application, which you know is a single instance, but it's now highly configurable. So you've got big firms now like Quilter using it. Quilter, of course, isn't a single firm. They've got national and they've got network and they've got different configurations and flavors within those. And Dynamic Planner, we've just invested as heavily in the ability to configure it for your proposition. So whether you are a large national, whether you are a wealth manager, whether you are a quality local firm, you can reflect your proposition, your brand, your words, your funds, your products, your platforms. We've provided though a platform to enable you to do that, and as we invest more in that configurability, so you know, we're actually now back really working a lot with enterprise clients, as we would call them, the very largest firms, as well as you know 2,000 small firms, because the market is obviously consolidating, and that consolidation is moving at a pace it's never moved before. If you are consolidating, aggregating, choose your term of art, what you want from your financial planning technology is a hotel, not a prison. You want something that your advisors and your support team want to use, and we've invested in the UX, which means that actually you can get, the advisors love it, and the feedback that we get is positive. We've won the Schroders Financial Planning System Award 4 years on the trot, and it's quite extraordinary. But I like to think that that is because of the investment that we're putting in, working very closely with clients. I mean, I think when firms see that you're committed to product excellence, they are very happy to give up their time to tell us what they need. So we've got some amazing early adopter groups now who will say, look, love what you're doing here, but you need to do this, this and this, and we've got a whole team who will listen to them and make sure that we're getting that product feedback. So, you know, it's definitely a journey, loads more to do, but you know, I would say that I'm more excited now about our future than I ever was.
It comes across, to be honest. I mean, obviously everyone likes their own business, it's their kind of baby, isn't it? But the passion comes across in everything that you talk around that. And That's really, really beneficial, I think. Or it's a good sign for the future that you are still this passionate about what you're doing.
Well, thank you. That's great. That's great. I mean, I am. I love our business. I love our clients, and I love, working. I'm never happier than when I am with a client, talking about what they're trying to achieve and thinking about how can we help you achieve it. That's always been the objective. But it's taken a little while. I mean, the first prospective client I ever went to see, who was a very well-known financial advisor principal at the time, I pitched my heart out and with a very early version of Dynamic Planner Classic, as we called it then. And he said to me, Ben, this all sounds very good, but I don't think I need it because I've got this, he said, lifting up his pen, and I've got this, showing me the back of the envelope, and that's all I need. And, but here we are 20 years down the line, broadband is everywhere, digital access is everywhere. The end client expects a digital experience. COVID, awful though it was, has massively accelerated people's expectations around what do I expect from a professional. Financial advice and financial planning is lucky because it's really material to people's lives. If you want to make a difference, help people fund the future that they want to have for themselves, help people understand what that future could be and help people fund it at a risk that's right for them. But it's also a time when the technology is available to us to be able to build more and more consumer-facing aspects of financial planning. For example, to be able to integrate with low code, no code, so that a firm has a single tech stack that talks to each other. So the kind of exciting, the possibilities are really exciting at this point.
And just to go, I suppose, go back again to your front room, or potentially just after your front room.
Yeah.
When we've talked previously, you told me a story about a time where things weren't particularly rosy. Can you recall that one for us?
Many times.
Was there?
I mean, if you're bootstrapping a business, it can get a bit hairy for sure. We used to. So from my front room, I did a deal with a very well-known financial planner who's still a great friend of mine. It's Jason Butler, who many of your listeners may have heard of, who ran Bloomsbury Financial Planning at the time, and his head of financial planning, Campbell Edgar, who at the time was president of the IFP. And the deal basically was we paid some money, I think about £700 a month, and they would help us get the first. So we would take their back room, which was a back room in which you could support about 3 people. I think we had 7 before we left, and / Jason kicked us out, and part of that deal was that we would give them some licenses to the software that we actually hadn't built at the time. But managing cash was always important. Managing cash is always important. The next place that we went was 288 Bishopsgate, and there I think we had a room for about 10 people perhaps. And if money got a bit tight, I'd have to walk around the block with our accountant, who would come in and sort of wag her finger at me and say, money's a bit tight, what are you going to do about it? I said, it'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, many businesses, all businesses will go through periods where cash is tight, or clients that don't convert as quickly as you hope they will. We've been very fortunate that I do believe in business you need the trend to be your friend. The move towards financial planning and the use of technology in financial planning has been inexorable. Nobody in this industry would ever say they need the financial advice to take longer. Nobody's ever going to say I need it to be less suitable. Nobody's ever going to say I need to demonstrate my value less than I do today. These are big drivers, they're inexorable. The end customer needs to fund their future lives in a way that even 10 years ago they didn't. DB schemes have ended, government support when you're in retirement has ended. People need to fund their future lives at a rate that they've never had to before. All of those things are tailwinds for the financial advice profession and the technology companies like us that serve it.
This has been fascinating so far, Ben. It's been great to kind of look at your journey from there to now. One thing I wanted to ask was, if somebody else is thinking about starting a business in financial services, potentially technology, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, good question. Probably three things, I think. The first has to be to know your customer. What pain are you solving for them? And it has to be an aspirin, not a vitamin, as the Americans say. What is the pain that you're solving? And be really clear about that. Because the clearer you can be, the more you understand precisely which firms, types of firms, clients are suffering that pain, and how you can solve it in a unique way. The bigger your business opportunity, the bigger your addressable market. So that would be the first thing. I think the second would be, actually particularly in technology now, to be ambitious, not to set your sights too low. I think the opportunity for change in the industry now is far, far greater than it ever was. And if you're talking financial technology businesses, the willingness of firms to adopt technology is far greater now than it certainly was when we started. And I think that gives great opportunities for both the firms themselves and the technology providers. And then I think the third thing would probably be, don't give up. Successes are rarely created overnight. There will be some twists and turns. Things won't ever work out as you expect, but if you stick at it, then you'll be surprised at how successful you can be.
You and I had a conversation towards the end of last year when I asked you for some business advice.
Yeah.
And we had a chat through my business,
I remember,
James Squared, which
Yeah.
was still very much in its infancy at that particular point.
Yeah.
And I remember, in my mind, I thought I knew exactly what I was doing.
Uh-huh.
And you very kindly gave me an hour or so of your time just to kind of talk through things. And I came away with kind of those lessons, I think.
Yeah.
You imparted those to me. And I haven't said this since, but actually, I don't think that I would still be in business if it wasn't for that conversation.
Wow.
It fundamentally changed the way that I looked at things.
Yeah.
So I do want to say thank you for that, because off the back of that, I've changed my target audience dramatically.
Yeah.
And that has resulted in a much more stable business.
Yeah.
Set my sights a lot higher.
Yeah.
And actually, it's now just working and becoming true. And
Amazing.
at one point, I was probably about a week away from stopping business,
Yeah.
and I decided not to. And some of that came from that conversation.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, it's great to hear. But I mean, look, you know so much about the industry, and obviously we worked together in your previous life, and that experience, insight, skill is really valuable to people. So I'm glad you've stuck at it, and I'm glad that people are taking you up on it. But it is a truism. I remember a particular. We've always researched very heavily the things that we do. When we haven't done it, usually the outcome isn't brilliant. And I remember, in my study at home, I've still got the early kind of paper prototypes of Dynamic Planner, as it was, that we sat in front of advisors and said, if we did this, then would it help? Da, da, da. But I do remember a particular research project that we had when we had first decided, okay, we need to upgrade Dynamic Planner completely. We need to rebuild everything completely. And we were, because the tech stack was getting quite old at that point, about 5 years ago now. And I said, well, okay, let's go and ask some clients and just tell us what's important to them. What are the burning issues that they believe we would be well placed to solve? I remember we hired a hotel room, meeting rooms rather, and one of the young product managers who'd done some of these interviews came and said, this is what clients are saying. This is what advice firms are saying. And I thought, no, that cannot be true. That cannot be true. And I actually quite ignored him. But fortunately, he kept coming back and saying, by the way, you just need to remember, this is what they're saying. And I'll tell you what it was. It was in our business, as a technology supplier, I don't know why this is, but there is a sort of obsession with new business and how do you help firms support new business. And a lot of technology providers do focus on that. But what this product manager was saying is this is not the problem. The problem is reviews. The Achilles heel, the glass ceiling is being limited by the number of people that an advisor can review. And we were hearing that from 5-6 years ago, from small firms to mid-sized firms to very largest. And it was quite a big thing, Ben, for us to say, okay, because Dynamic Planner was known for risk profiling and for supporting the new business and new recommendations. It was quite a big thing to say, actually, we're going to stop doing that. Well, not stop doing it, but we're going to focus all of our efforts on building the best review process that we can, because that is the deepest pain that our clients are experiencing right now. And we believe that pain is only going to get deeper. And as it turns out, we were right because of Consumer Duty. That pain is following the summer. We only need to read the press as to how difficult some firms are finding it. And so we really doubled down, put all of our investment, and launched in 2019 the first review process. And now that is just, as I said earlier in the discussion, scaling. But I can put down the prioritization to one piece of research, a series of client calls where we asked, where is the pain? And that, I think, is an important lesson for us. I take a lot of confidence when I hear and listen to our clients telling me something. I'll reflect on it and I think, actually, this is what we need to solve for them.
Thank you, Ben. Very insightful indeed.
You're very welcome.
So, as our regular listeners will know, we tend to close off each of our episodes with some quick-fire questions to find out a bit more about the person that I'm talking to. We've already delved into your past, Ben, and your businesses today, but if it's okay with you, I've got a few more questions to find out a bit more.
Sure, go for it.
We'll start off easy.
Okay, all right, I'm braced.
What do you like to do at the weekend?
What do I like to do at the weekend? I like to exercise. I like to see my kids if they're around, and I actually like to. This is really bizarre, but we've got a compost heap, and I love to turn my compost heap over. Sign of age. There you go.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what would you say motivates you?
I want to make an impact. I've always wanted to make an impact, I think, in anything that I've done. And, if I can make a positive impact in the company, in our team's lives, in the industry that we serve, and the clients that the industry serves, then that's a good use of time.
What's something you've always wanted to do but haven't yet had the chance to?
So many things. I was once introduced to a guy who had a sailboat in the Caribbean, beautiful old wooden schooner, and he was a consultant, and he was quite a well-known consultant amongst the small islands of the Caribbean, and he would sail from island to island dispensing his advice. I thought that was just the coolest thing. Maybe in, I don't know, my 60s and 70s I'll go and do that, I don't know. Yeah.
That would be quite cool, to be honest, wouldn't it?
It would be awesome, yeah.
What's something you've changed your mind about in the last year?
Ooh, another good question. You're really making me think about these. Here's one. So my son is a professional rugby player, and he plays for Bath. And I used to think the game was safe and I'm not so sure it is. There's a big article in the Sunday Times that has really got me thinking about the safety for professional rugby players these days. There's a court case going to the High Court of 300 rugby players, mostly professional, who suffered brain damage as a result of the game. And it isn't the game that I used to play now. It's a very different game, and so I think that you could say I've changed my mind about. Yeah.
What's the greatest life lesson that you've learned?
Don't give up. Don't give up. I watched that new movie at the weekend on Netflix about the 64-year-old swimmer who swam between Cuba and Florida. She first tried it when she was 30. I forget the name of the film, but there you go. Don't give up.
And last but not least, what advice would you give to your 10-year-old self?
Don't give up. Aim high, and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me and our viewers. And for anyone that hasn't looked at Dynamic Planner, you really should do. It is very, very straightforward to use, cost-effective way of making it easy to do business. And what really caught my attention was the annual review process. The reports that come out look so professional. It really does look like your clients get an incredible amount of value from what for advisors really is kind of 2 or 3 minutes work to pop that data in there. So if you want to find out more, visit dynamicplanner.com.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you for the plug. Much appreciated.
Not a problem at all. Thanks, Ben.
All right, good to see you.